It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show, only on Secular Media Network.
Hello, everybody. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. We are going to keep the financial segment a little short today because we have a delightfully long interview with Aron Ra. Not too much of a surprise that you put him and me together, both notorious talkers, that it goes a little long, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I will warn you that this was recorded about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, when I had quite a bit of a cold, so I sound like shit. Thankfully, it's all better, so those who listen to these shows 1 week at a time might think that I've been sick for close to 3 weeks. It was a good week plus, but it just so happened that sometimes in the way this works is I got to do a couple of recordings in quick succession, and unfortunately for you, the listener, I recorded the interview with Aron Ra while I was still sick a week and a half ago. So my apologies for that. Hopefully you can endure and soldier on. The financial topic for today, I guess, is Wells Fargo. I think I've mentioned it a little bit in passing, but we're going to discuss it a little bit more here. If you hadn't heard by now, you must be living under a rock. But Wells Fargo has allowed its employees, or encouraged, coerced, forced its employees to open up millions and millions of accounts for customers when the customers didn't ask for these accounts. And you may ask yourself, how is this even possible? Well, that's a great fucking question. I've had several people ask me, what does that mean, accounts? Well, it means everything. I mean, you could have a checking account, and someone at the bank talks to you, encourages you to open a checking account, and you don't want to, but they go ahead and open one for you anyway. And it may be perfectly harmless that you have a checking account that you don't know about, or you eventually figure out that you have one, and maybe you think, gosh, I don't remember saying yes to that. But okay, I have another checking account or a savings account. But then there's also sometimes problems because the account may not have been funded, and it requires a $100 or $200 or $500 minimum, and you didn't put the money in there, or the employee didn't take your fucking money and put it in there. So now you get hit with monthly fees. And you call the bank and you say, why am I paying $8 a month? And they said, because you don't have the minimum $200 in there, and maybe you still feel embarrassed. And this is often a result of scams, is that it is to intimidate and to embarrass the victim and make sure that you don't question it any further, because obviously you made a mistake, you forgot something, and so maybe you move a couple $100 over there to stop the penalties. And now you just have an extra account. They have also opened up credit card accounts. And you just get a credit card in the mail. And again, with a little luck, you're thinking to yourself, I don't remember actually applying for a card, but okay, they sent me one. Maybe you never use it. Maybe there's never a penalty. But the employee gets to meet their goal, their quota, and they get a bonus. And Wells Fargo at some point started firing people that were doing this fraudulently, apparently 5 to 6 years ago. And since that time, they now claim that they fired as many as 5,300 people. And when interviewed in Congress, the CEO, John Stumpf, nice name, John, keeps referring to the fact that it's only 1% of the people that are a problem. Well, 1% he means by the 1% of people that have been fired. So the other people that haven't been fired, he doesn't count as part of the problem. He doesn't seem to recognize that it's a systemic problem, a system-wide problem that he and his subordinates created. They came up with a campaign that 8 is great, and that each one of their clients should have 8 accounts. The average in banking is 3, and that might be a checking, a savings, and a credit card, or a Christmas account, or account in your name and then a joint account in your name with you and your spouse or a child. So 3 is the magic number. 3 is the normal in the banking industry, and they know and they have learned from experience that the more accounts you have in a bank, the net result is the more money you have, the more investments you have in that bank. So they have aggressively encouraged you to open more accounts, just like a lot of people have had this experience. If you go to your bank and you add a few $1,000s or you take out a few $1,000s and the teller notices that you have $50,000 or more sitting in your checking or savings account, they might say, you should talk to our advisor because they want to open a brokerage account for you or an IRA account or a Roth IRA account or some other kind of account. And so that's what drove this situation. The bank highly encouraged and financially rewarded people for opening accounts. And people will do what they are paid to do. And if your bonus relies on it, some people will get tempted to open accounts that they're not supposed to. The big question, of course, is how is there not a check and balance? How does the system not know immediately? And when you start firing the first couple of hundred people, why did no one in higher management realize that there's a systemic problem? And some of the people that have been fired now have come out and said that, hey, I wasn't fired for opening fake accounts. I was fired for not opening fake accounts. I wasn't opening enough accounts, and so they let me go. And if people in your office start getting fired for not doing something, well, that's also a very powerful motivator for you to do what is necessary. I remember years and years ago, I had a boss that wanted me to take some extra revenue and post it in the accounting system against one of the expenses. And I tried to explain that revenue doesn't go against expenses. Revenue has to show up as revenue. You can create your own ad hoc report that shows the revenue minus, or the expense minus this additional revenue, but money coming in has to show as revenue and money going out has to count as expenses. After the meeting, the CEO, or the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, pulled me aside and said, Phil, you're really upsetting the owner. If you want to make him happy, why don't you just do it the way that he wants? I said that's how people end up in jail. That's how companies end up failing when they start playing fast and loose with the accounting. It was not acceptable to me then, and it is not acceptable to me now. So I've talked about banks on occasions, and I've mentioned that too big to fail is a phrase that is too long. It's just simply too big. And because of all this extra excitement and some Facebook posts and tweets, I've had a few people in the last week or so ask me, Phil, what's really the problem with big banks? I like going anywhere in the country and being able to use my bank. Well, most people don't actually go to another part of the country and walk into their bank. And if they do, it's very rare. The vast majority of the time, you're going to use either the credit card, which if it's MasterCard, Visa, Discovery, American Express, it works pretty much everywhere. Or you're going to use some kind of ATM card. And again, that pretty much works everywhere. You might pay a $2 or $3 fee, and it'll even work in other countries. So you don't need a physical branch to walk into. And I'm not saying we can't have national banks that are spread throughout the United States. I'm saying they can't be as big as they are. If I were in charge, if I were king, the two things that I would make is that a bank may not have more than 5% of the entire Americans' deposits on hand. So no one bank may be bigger than 5% of all deposits. I would also reenact a large portion of the Glass-Steagall Act that was passed in the 30s, I think. I should know that year, but in the 30s, that created a separation, a wall, kind of a wall of separation, but between banks, basic banks, you put in your money, you maybe get a car loan or a home loan, and you have a Christmas account and a savings account and CDs. That's a bank. That it's very, very boring. It's very, very safe. And it's backed up by the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Up to $250,000 is the current amount. And even if that bank fails, the government covers your money and you don't lose anything. That provides comfort. That provides safety. It virtually eliminates runs on a bank because you know even if the bank folds, the government is going to cover any money that's left over. If a bank has 25 or 30% of American deposits in it, it becomes a much, much bigger challenge for the government to cover any outstanding funds. It creates an additional instability in the system because if one mega bank goes down, it might influence another or a third or a fourth, kind of like we had in 2008. The other thing that we used to have with this wall separating banks, basic boring banks, you also had brokerage banks or investment banking, where the bank might launch companies, like things like in Wolf of Wall Street. They're brokers and dealers, and they're trading in derivatives and tranches and all kinds of fancy things, possibly high returns. Let them, but don't do it with my money. And be very safe in a bank. I might make my own investments, but I don't want what I thought was to be invested wildly by you to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money, and then I, as a taxpayer, have to bail you out. So you should have very small, still can be some national ones, but mostly regional, small banks, and then you have investment banks. And when an investment bank fails, no one gets bailed out. It's just like most other companies. When a person opens their own store or gets a franchise, if they go broke, they go broke. The investment banks should be broke. Another thing that was created as a division with the Glass-Steagall Act was that insurance companies could not do banking. And now we have things like Wells Fargo. We have things like Citibank. We have things like ING. And these companies do insurance, life insurance, property insurance, homeowners insurance, investment banking, and banking. And if they have too many investments, say in Southern California, and there's a big earthquake, maybe that company is no longer solvent. And so now your banking deposits, which you thought were safe, you can't collect. If they have too many homes that are insured by them in Florida and a great big hurricane smacks it real hard and they can't cover all the losses, again, your banking deposits are at risk. So all of these things were put in place to spread out risk, to protect the citizens, and this growing attitude sometimes in the United States of not only of I've got mine, fuck you, but let the buyer beware. Let each individual person take their own risks. We've done that in the past. When there's not social safety nets, when there's not a lender of last resort from the government, when there's not a banking insurance system, when there's not a life insurance reinsurance system, people lose confidence in the systems that they use. And if you get a run on a local bank, that causes everyone to run to the other local bank and take out their money just in case. Well, most of you probably know the banks don't just hold all of your deposits and sit on them. They lend them out for homes and cars. So often the vast majority of the money is not there. So those are some of the reasons why we should not have large banks. They should be much smaller, and we won't have some of the problems that we currently have. So I'm going to play the first 2 or 3 minutes of a recent, dare I call it, interrogation of John Strumpf, the CEO of Wells Fargo, by Senator Elizabeth Warren. And she's trying to ask him about responsibility, because he keeps claiming that he's responsible for this, but she doesn't understand what does he mean by he's taking responsibility because he's not really suffered that much. And so I just want to give you a flavor for that. So we'll do that for just a couple minutes. And, of course, I'll rejoin you when I stop that. So listen to this. Elizabeth Warren interviewing John Strumpf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Strumpf, the Wells Fargo Vision and Values Statement, which you frequently cite, says, quote, "We believe in values lived, not phrases memorized. If you want to find out how strong a company's ethics are, don't listen to what its people say, watch what they do." So let's do that. Since this massive years-long scam came to light, you have said repeatedly, quote, "I am accountable." But what have you actually done to hold yourself accountable? Have you resigned as CEO or chairman of Wells Fargo?
The board, I serve at
Have you resigned?
No, I've not.
All right. Have you returned one nickel of the millions of dollars that you were paid while this scam was going on?
Well, first of all, this was by 1% of our people.
That's not my question. My question, this is about responsibility. Have you returned one nickel of the millions of dollars that you were paid while this scam was going on?
The board will take care of that.
Have you returned one nickel of the money you earned while this scam was going on?
And the board will do...
I will take that as a no then. Have you fired a single senior executive? And by that, I don't mean a regional manager or a branch manager. I'm asking about the people who actually led your community banking division or your compliance division.
We've made a change in our regional to lead our regional bank.
I just said, I'm not asking about regional managers. I'm not asking about branch managers. I'm asking if you have fired senior management, the people who actually led community banking division, who oversaw this fraud, or the compliance division that was in charge of making sure that the bank complied with the law. Did you fire any of those people? No. Okay. So you haven't resigned. You haven't returned a single nickel of your personal earnings. You haven't fired a single senior executive. Instead, evidently, your definition of accountable is to push the blame to your low-level employees who don't have the money for a fancy PR firm to defend themselves. It's gutless leadership.
All right, that's Elizabeth Warren talking to the CEO of Wells Fargo. Hopefully we get more of that. It does look like some more people in Congress are interested in bank regulations, but I'm still not optimistic. So contact your senators, representatives, and let them know that you would like something to change. And hopefully we can make some progress. And quite frankly, it needs to be, we used to have one telephone company, which was a legal mandate, and they got broken up so we could have competition. We had railroad companies and oil companies get too big and put citizens at risk of monopoly power. And I think we're getting to the point where for consumer protection and being able to fix companies, these are just too big. This guy apparently himself doesn't know or understand what's actually going on and can just easily fire 5,000 little people and doesn't really care about them, and he gets paid a couple of hundred of millions of dollars. And as of yet, he's not been held responsible other than the fact that he uses the phrase. So that'll wrap up my much longer than expected rant about banks. Hopefully that provides some helpful information, and we will go to our interview with Aron Ra.
Only on Secular Media Network.
This is Phil Ferguson with Polaris Financial Planning, the home of science-based investing. I see people owning really bad investments all of the time. Many advisors are paid a commission by a big company to sell you something you may not need. It's kind of like church. They create fear, then they tell you what you want to hear, and then they take your money. What you want is an advisor that is paid only by you. That is a fee-only fiduciary advisor. Remember, people work for who they are paid by. You can contact me, Phil, at PolarisFinancialPlanning.com, or listen to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Each show, we have an interesting investing skeptically topic and an interview with someone fighting to end religion. Polaris also gives 10% of gross revenue to support the growing secular movement. You're not just getting better investments, you're helping to change the world. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, this is the Phil Ferguson Show. With me today, I have Aron Ra. How are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well.
And for regular listeners, I guess any listener, make sure you get it right. It's not Aaron, it's Aron, right?
It's spelled like Aaron, but pronounced like registered nurse.
Aron Ra.
RN.
RN. Oh, I never thought of that before. I'll have to remember that, Aron. Now, you've been around for a few years in the movement, right?
I became an activist roughly 20 years ago, and I guess I was fully into the atheist movement, as it were, for at least the last decade.
Now, how you are currently living on the movement, is that fair to say?
That is correct. I'm doing this full time now. We got on Patreon, and it was enough it was enough that I no longer had to work that job. I was in a job for 14 years that I absolutely hated, that became increasingly restrictive to the point that I was no longer able to do any activism at all. And it actually became a choice whether if I was going to still do anything for the movement at all, I wouldn't be able to do it in that job.
Well, that sounds like the last day job I had, except for I could still do activism, but it became more and more restrictive, more and more painful, and I had the career for about 12, 13 years. Really enjoyed it to start, but it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, but that's what it's like working for the man.
Yeah, well, were I not already an atheist, this corporate cube farm would have convinced me that there was no such thing as a soul.
Oh, I've been there. I'm sure you've seen the movie Office Space.
Yes. However, the job more like mine is, if you ever seen the movie The Incredibles.
Yes.
Mr. Incredible has a job working in an office where he's denying little old ladies their insurance coverage. That was exactly my position.
Wow. So you're Mr. Incredible too, huh?
Well, thank you.
No, I didn't have that specific job, but I've been in the cube farm, and I didn't want to go back. So, wander around and you do your thing, and let's go ahead and tell everybody where they can go to Patreon to donate, so we're not going to hide the fact that we're doing this for money. Where do they go to help out?
Anybody that wants to support my work, and I need all the help I can get, that's patreon.com, patreon.com/ARONRA. That's with one A, ARONRA.
And this is one of the things that I've been in this about a decade. Maybe I'm getting to my 11th year. I'm not sure. I've lost track somewhere. It happens with age. I've been saying money has to be involved, and I make it no secret that my show brings clients to me, and I want your show and your work to bring money to you so you can keep doing it. So I tell people all the time, if you are getting some benefit, donate so we can get more of this kind of stuff. And you have been doing the foundational Falsehoods of Creationism videos for quite a long time. Is that not correct?
Well, that was the first series. I'd expanded on that after I did the initial 15 foundational falsehoods. I then went into other explanative arguments against creationism and promoting science, of which there are quite a few. And I've integrated a lot of that into my book, which is the book version of the foundational falsehoods of creationism, which will be out November 1st.
Just in time for Christmas.
Yeah, and I'm also starting a book tour, which is crazy for me. I normally make a half a dozen videos a month, and it would be a couple of podcasts, a couple of activism videos, and a couple of educational videos. We make videos on our channel, and we upload them to a separate channel called Living Science Lessons that are specifically designed to teach next generation science standards, the national science standards for biology, to middle school and high school students, where we unapologetically include evolution where it's relevant.
And of course you should.
And this has been recently adopted by there's a Teachers Institute for Evolutionary Science that is being hosted by the Richard Dawkins Foundation, and they've recently included links for our video series as well, so they're promoting them. And I'm getting feedback that at least some teachers at their own discretion, and some secular homeschoolers as well, are using our teaching materials because it is these are the required standards that children are going to be tested on. We just don't omit the evolutionary references like a lot of other people will.
Well, that's the way you and I have both been fighting creationism for a very long time. Give us one of these falsehoods, if you would.
Foundational falsehoods of
one.
creationism. Well, one of them is that there are no beneficial mutations, which, of course, I include lists of them and explanations for exactly what they are. That macroevolution has never been observed. Again, I provide lists for the observed instances of speciation and explain exactly what all of that means. That there are no transitional species in the fossil record, which is a really common argument. And my chapter on that includes something like, or at least the video series included something like 300 different species. I don't name 300 in the book. I go through specific references to a handful of them and make other slight references to the volume others, because it's difficult to explain every one of them, not and be entertaining at the same time. But there's a hell of a volume. And my personal favorite of the foundational falsehoods of creationism is that evolution is just a theory.
Just a theory.
That one irritates the crap out of me.
And it's one of those things.
What creationism is all about is finding an excuse to deny reality.
You just stole the words out of my mouth. I said, it's kind of a delusion, and they have to go through incredible hoops to hide themselves, to put their head in the sand deep enough to not hear the reality around them.
I've actually seen adults putting their fingers in their ears, literally putting their fingers in their ears, closing the eyes and going blah, 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 in order to avoid hearing what, the forbidden knowledge that they don't want to know. So they'll ask me all kinds of challenging questions that the average person probably couldn't answer, but because I've been invested in this topic for so long and I've done so much research on it, I can answer all these questions. So they'll ask me a question that they think I can't answer. I start to give the answer. They'll interrupt the answer to ask me another question. I start to give that answer. They'll interrupt that answer, too, to ask me another question until they get to one that I can't answer. And at this point, the only one that pretty much left is what came before the Big Bang or something like that. And then when I say, well, science doesn't know, there's no way that we can know the answer to this. And so, well, see, you come to a point where you can't answer. And then I have to point out that you completely ignored that I answered every other question. And you also ignored that religion does not have any answer to anything. Yeah, you say that a God did it. You say it's magic, although you deny that it's magic, but you use magic. You believe in magic. You just don't call it magic. But the magic is what it is. If you look up the word magic, it's the evocation of supernatural forces or entities to control or forecast natural events in ways that are inexplicable by science because they defy the laws of physics. That's magic. That's what a miracle is, too. Miracle and magic both mean the same thing. So these people believe in magic, and they just assert what they don't really know as if they had knowledge. And this is what Peter Boghossian was talking about when he said that faith is pretending to know what you don't know. And that's when religion gives an answer, they're giving a bullshit excuse. I don't know if I can say that on your show, but
you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Well, thank you very much. But that's what it's all about. It's about a denial of reality so that you can pretend something else. It's literally make-believe. And where it becomes offensive to me is when they use this mind control technique, to indoctrinate and inculcate sequestered school children to essentially lie to them. And there's no chance that they don't know that this is lying. If it's factually incorrect, and you know it's factually incorrect, and you're going to say otherwise anyway, that's lying. The first debate that I had on this around about 2005 was with people on the Board of Education, and one of the people that I was debating with, and this was a formal debate with moderators, he admitted that there were transitional species in the fossil record, but he said that he wanted to teach students that there were none because he said it was important that they believe there are none. Now, I don't know how much more overt you can be in the fact that you're admitting that you're going to lie to other people's kids in order to manipulate what they believe.
That's pretty deep, and of course, he probably didn't see that there was a problem with that.
That's the other amazing thing. They don't even see that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, it's for the greater good.
I mean, it's okay to lie if you're lying.
If I have to lie to you and abuse you and hurt you just to make sure your eternal soul is safe, then it's okay. It opens the door to anything, everything.
Yeah.
Now, you said you've got this book tour. You're going to be gone for a few weeks?
Yeah, I'm going to be gone for 5 weeks. And as I said, I usually make a half a dozen videos a month, but I'm going to be for the end of September and all of October, I'm going to be on like a 20-city tour, and it's all on a road trip. So I'm not going to be able to upload anything that entire time. So I've had 3 weeks to basically upload all of the videos that I would normally have done in 2 months.
Yeah.
So that's a crazy schedule.
And
but
where are you going? What cities are you going to so people can find you?
Oh, okay. Well, if they want to look up my speaking page, it can be found on pathos.org. I blog under the heading of Reason Advocates at Pathos. And is it .org or .com? I can't remember. It's I don't know. It's pathos.com. And my speaking roster is there, and I start in El Paso on the 24th. Matter of fact, since I've got this up here, I'm looking at it.
It's all good.
Just pull up that page. I'm sorry, what?
It's all good. Pull it up and let's get the listeners exactly where you're going.
El Paso on September 24th. On the 27th, I'll be in Sierra Vista, Arizona. On the 28th, I'll be Tucson, Arizona. 30th, I'll be in Phoenix. Then in October, this is going to be too dry. There's too many dates here. Riverside, San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Berkeley, Seattle, Portland. Then I'm in Sacramento for 3 days for their Free Thought Day. San Jose, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Amarillo. And then as soon as I get home, I get one night in my own bed, and then I have to go to the Reason Fest in Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yes. And so is it all Southwest then? You don't go New England or Chicago?
Sadly, no. I am doing, like I said, the thing in Michigan, but other than that, everything that I've got scheduled upcoming is like in Florida or somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, I had originally planned to go to Reason Fest, but my wife reminded me it's our anniversary.
Uh-huh.
So
well, it's going to be my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm going to spend my birthday with friends, meaning like Steve Hill and Shelley Siegel and
absolutely. Are you
Sanal
going?
Edamaraku, the people that are going to be speaking there.
Sure. Are you going to Skepticon?
I am not.
All righty. Well,
I was supposed to go out of the country at that point. I was fully expecting that I would be in Bogota, Colombia.
Just for fun, or?
No, they wanted me to come speak at an atheist conference down there.
Oh, very cool.
And I thought, okay, I've never been invited to South America. It would be nice to be able to tick that continent off my list, right? But I said, okay. They finally came up with a date after a whole lot of deliberation. They say, hey, can you come down on this date in November? And I says, yes, absolutely, I can. And I just came back with, the cheapest ticket that I can get for a flight is going to be $600. I'm going to need $300 for expenses plus, the hotel and at least one meal. So I'm thinking in the rates of Bogota, Colombia, we're looking right at around $1,000. And they stopped and they said, "You mean you're not going to pay that?"
Yeah, what can I say? Bless their hearts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the movement and everything, but I tell you, I'm not going to pay $1,000 out of my own pocket to go speak at some other country. I've actually already done that.
Right.
I don't want to name where, but I was asked to go speak somewhere, and I just worked it into a tour of a number of places that I was already going. And then I get to this one place, and I say, okay, well, here's what the plane cost to get me here from the last country, and here's what I got the cheapest hotel I can get, but here it is, and all this. And they said, oh, we don't pay for those things.
Well,
that's not something we do.
Well, we started the show off talking about that money has to be involved. I'm sorry, folks. That's just the way the world freaking works.
Yeah.
So find your favorite group, donate some money. I hit up my local members for $5 or $10 to keep up the meetup page. So every little bit counts, and eventually we get enough numbers and enough mass that we can get real advertisers, not just Phil and his little Polaris thing, but wouldn't it be great to have Nike shoes at an atheist convention?
You're funded by Polaris, are you?
Well, I am Polaris Financial Planning.
Oh, financial planning. Okay.
Yeah, not the motorcycle snowmobile people.
Because I ride one of those.
Yeah. And it's funny because the name Polaris, to my knowledge, is used by at least 3 different investment companies. I'm based in Illinois. There's one in Ohio and another one in Alaska.
Okay.
And we all pick. I talked to the two other owners. We've all picked the name for the same reason.
There's another guy that uses my name.
Aron Ra.
Yep.
And what does he do?
He's a
born-again preacher?
No, much funnier than that. He's some kind of
porn star?
Close. He's a very gay artist, photography artist, and he's quite a bit different than me.
Yeah.
And I sent him a message one time to, when you use that name, does anybody contact you thinking they're me? I mean, so far it hasn't happened the other way around. They know I'm the ugly old bastard and not the pretty kid.
What does they say? Beauty is wasted on the youth. Well, Aron, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a little commercial break, and we'll come back and talk more about this book and see if we can get you some more Patreon members. Can you hang on?
Yes, sir.
Here's an excerpt from The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray.
Every day, religion affects us in ways we may not realize. It makes your Uncle Ned spend hours praying for you. It gives your Baptist neighbor a reason to reject her own child who married a Catholic. It teaches your Pentecostal sister to spank her children to keep them from going to hell. It requires a Catholic priest to deny his sex drive. It causes people to give enormous amounts of money to religious organizations and causes you to avoid talking to your cousin Jenny for fear she may try to convert you to Jehovah's Witnesses. Religion has both obvious and subtle influences on you and on society. This book explores the impact of religion on you and your world. It draws open the curtain of mystery and offers ways to understand and make informed decisions about religion. Have you ever wondered what makes religion so powerful? What makes people profess deep faith even as they act in ways that betray that faith? What makes people blind to the irrationalities of their own religion, yet see clearly the problems of other religions? How does it weave its way into our political system? If these and similar questions interest you, this book will help you understand its power in you, your family, and your culture.
The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray is available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are still listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. With me today, I have Aron Ra, and we were going to talk some more about the book, but actually, before we do that, where is your YouTube page?
Well, that's easy to find. Aronra.
Well, that's pretty simple.
Yep, all written as one word.
And you have what, like 4 or 5 videos on there now?
It says that I have over 100 videos. I don't remember uploading 100 videos, but that's what it says. And I do a lot of presentations around the country and in different countries, and I always upload those too. So I can easily lose track. I've been on the public speaking thing, speaking somewhere at least once a month for a number of years now. So it probably is over 100.
Now, the new book, you have me at a disadvantage because I've not had it in my hands and I've not heard it on audio file yet. So I know that you and David Smalley are currently producing that book, right? The audiobook?
Yeah, that's the other crazy thing about my schedule. Not only did I have to figure out how to upload a dozen videos in 3 weeks that I would normally take 2 months to do, but on top of recording the audiobook, which it's a big book. I mean, each chapter is over 10,000 words. So it's about 4 hours in studio per chapter.
Whoa.
So I've still got 4 chapters left to record. So that means 16 hours in studio this week, because it all has to be done this week before I start the book tour, and that gives me 4 days.
I mean that's
so I either go into Dogma Debate Studios every day for 4 hours, or we try to do some double time and get it done in 2 days.
That's just amazing. And I see here the length, 440 pages. That's almost as big as the Old Testament.
Well, if you're going to be talking about what's wrong with creationism, I don't think that can be a pamphlet.
Yeah. So
I haven't gotten many reviews of it yet. I mean, I've seen a few. I got one from Dr. Richard Carrier and Dr. Robert Price, who are both, considered to be experts in scriptural history, and they wrote very shining reviews of it. And I got a very, very sparkling review from James the Amazing Randi.
I'm seeing that here on Amazon. That is swanky.
And my favorite review, though, I just wanted to get somebody to say I read it and I liked it. And the second person to buy my book was somehow, he was at Dragon Con and he'd read a couple of chapters in the first couple of nights. Why would you be reading a book at Dragon Con? But
right.
That aside, he wrote a review that was just amazing. That was the only other review that I've seen, and it wasn't one that I requested, but I had to put it up on Facebook because it made me really happy.
Well, one would imagine a person that would read at Dragon Con might also be a good writer.
Perhaps.
That's why they read, I guess, to learn how to write.
Because I didn't see a lot of room or time for reading. I mean, I was there 4 nights, and I think I slept 4 hours in that entire time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's weird about conferences. You can find a way, at least for a big one, to stay up almost 24/7 if you really look around and went to the right parties and found the people that got up early for breakfast and all that stuff. But
yeah, plenty of time to sleep on the plane.
Well, I have had. You and I go to a lot of conferences, so I'm sure you've experienced this where you get a group of 2 or 3 speakers together in the afternoon that are friends of yours, and you know them, and you've seen their talk already. So that's when you go take your nap. So that's a secret trick for all you convention goers. If you've already seen the talk 2 or 3 times, that's when you can get your nap.
That doesn't happen with me. The only time I've ever done the same talk over again is when, like this book tour, for example. I'm going to be 5 weeks to 20 cities. I'm speaking at a different place every other day, and sometimes every day. You mean like I'll be speaking in Phoenix, and then the next morning I have to be in Riverside, California. To give you an idea. And so I've got a lot of days like that on the schedule. So obviously I'm going to be doing the same talk throughout that whole time. But then once I get home, that's going to be uploaded to YouTube, and I will then move on to a different talk.
Right. Yep. I do new talks, and I've also had people that request me to repeat a talk. They've seen it somewhere else, and they want it done again, and it's a different audience. But even then, it's the exact same talk, but like 10, 15, 20% of it might be different because I want to keep it a little fresh, a little lively, and change things. And my newest talk is how to beat your children like a good Christian. So, going to have some fun with that.
I've had very few repeated talks. One with the Unholy Trinity.
Yeah.
When we did the American tour, so
That's
I had to speak in Amarillo, Albuquerque, and San Antonio, give the same speech in all 3 places. And then when we went to Australia, I did the same thing, where I spoke in Sydney, Brisbane, and then Melbourne and Perth. So it was 4 cities. I did the same presentation there. But we were also included in that was New Zealand. But that wasn't part of the Unholy Trinity thing, so I ended up doing a completely different presentation there, even though it was part of the same trip.
And so my listeners probably know, but just in case they don't, the Unholy Trinity is you, Matt Dillahunty, and Seth Andrews, and someone hooked the 3 of you up and booked a little tour package for you to go give talks, right?
Yeah, that was Seth's idea initially, and he didn't expect it to be as successful as it was. As a matter of fact, it caused him some disdain. I mean, 'cause he came up with this little tongue-in-cheek joke idea, but it really took off.
It did, and a lot of people wanted you guys to all go everywhere else, and it's like, okay, well, are you going to fund us to go everywhere else? Because if you're not making videos to your Patreons, you're not getting paid. So it's one of these things that the travel is not only expensive in and of itself, but it's keeping you from making your living.
Yep, I mean they took pretty good care of us when we went to Australia. That was really amazing. I mean, just telling Seth for example, that they'd invited us to Australia, he was having trouble accepting that they were covering all of our expenses. They're flying us we had an entire entourage. It wasn't like some other places where you land at the airport and people just expect that you're going to know what train to take to get where you're supposed to, and there's
Right.
nobody even to meet you at the airport sometimes. But no, that wasn't the way in Australia. In Australia, we had the rep from Melbourne, the rep from Brisbane and Sydney, traveling with us to all three destinations, and then we had a separate trip out to Perth. But I mean, it was great care of us. Took care of every need and all of that, and yet it was still expensive because Australia is just expensive anyway.
Right. And, you buy some souvenirs and gifts, but I've gone to conferences as a speaker where they've assigned, a minder, a helper.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is the most delightful thing when you come down the escalator at the airport or wherever, and there's someone standing there with a placard that's got your name on it, and they say, let's go to the parking garage. I've got a car here for you. They take you to the hotel. You check in. They say, you're probably hungry. Do you want something to eat, something to drink? And they show you around town a little bit, and then they get you to the first appointment. That's just absolutely delightful.
They did that for me in San Antonio for the Unholy Trinity too, and I really abused them for it. They said, do you have any particular drink that you want me to have, any special brand or whatever? And I said, yes, I want Spaten Franziskaner Brau Dunkelweizen Wiesbier.
And did they find it?
It took them a while. They said that they'd been all over town to get it, but yeah, I had an ice chest full of Dunkelweizen.
Wow, that's nice. That's nice. You're a little abuser there, but that's nice. Well, when I did my California tour, I mean, I had crowds anywhere from 200, and then when I had 3 people. Mm-hmm. That was kind of
people?
3 people, but it was a heck of a show.
Was it in New York?
No, it was California.
Okay, see, that's a funny thing because I went to a lot of small venues, but I mean the room always filled.
Right.
And in one case, when we went to Sweden, for example, they didn't even post an advertisement for it. And they'd been in contact with me several weeks in advance, but they didn't promote the event until 18 hours before I was supposed to give the talk.
Wow.
And yet the room still filled up.
No, that's amazing.
But then we get to New York, where I'm expecting a crowd in New York.
That's why you asked.
Yeah, and there were 7 people.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that in this event happened to be, something that was just added last minute, and they really, I was in the area. I was driving right past this city, so I just slipped it into the schedule, and the organizer and 2 other people showed up, and I was like, well, all right, well, these 3 people came to hear me talk, and here I am, so let's
The funny thing is, it's happened to me like that in New York twice.
That is weird.
And both times would be coming back from a European tour. I did 7 countries the first time and 15 countries the second time. And the venues, as I said, would be, they're small venues where there would be 20, a couple dozen people. Maybe in Denmark, I think I might have had 5 dozen. But then I get to New York, and either time, New York City, we could not fill that room. And it wasn't a big room.
It's one of those things.
One time it was a big room.
Have you noticed that in the United States that it's easier to get a big crowd in the South?
That makes sense. And I also heard that it was hard to get the New York groups because apparently there's different skeptics groups, atheist groups, and they don't overlap. They don't attend each other's events.
It's the weirdest thing because in Chicago, Chicago is a really big city, and there's a big skeptical group, and they do regular stuff, but the crowds are never more than 30, 40, 50. Every once in a while, they have an annual event that maybe has 120, and they're excited, but I'm like, there's 5 million people. What?
Yeah.
How do we not get a bigger crowd? And then in, where was I, Tennessee or Kentucky, they put together a conference in 30 days, and they had one headliner. Of course, it was David Silverman, so he's a big draw, but they had 400 people in a conference, and, towns are a fraction of the size of Chicago. It's just an amazing thing.
I went to the World Atheist Conference in Dublin, Ireland, and they had P.Z. Myers and Richard Dawkins and myself and I'm wishing I could remember everybody else that was there. There was a lot of people. There were a lot of different activists from Europe and such that were there. But I mean, there was some big names there, and there was only 350 people. And by the way, that is a full room,
right?
Because the O'Callaghan Alexander Hotel only had a hall that could house 350 people. So this is what they expected to draw, you know. So we never expect to have really big events like they do at, say, American Southern churches,
right?
Did you happen to make the Global Atheist Conference in Melbourne back in 2012?
I did not. I have not gone to a conference outside the United States.
That was an epic event. It was not in a high school or a college classroom as some of these conferences can be. It wasn't just in a hotel or anything. This was hosted in the Melbourne Civic Centre, their big Civic Center. It was 5,000 seat stadium, and it was filled to capacity. It was standing room only on that last day. And Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Ayaan Hirsi Ali and all it just like it's throw out a name, you know, right. Mr. Deity. I mean, like everybody was there, and that's why I'm kind of surprised that you were not. But it was a huge event. I'm like 5,000 people crammed into this place, right?
Right.
And I really wanted to get on stage and disappoint everybody by reminding them that we have, here in Dallas, we have a half a dozen churches that are bigger than this building.
Only half a dozen? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's actually half a dozen between my house and my mother's son my son's mother. When I go to you know drop him off or whatever, we'll count 11 mega churches.
Is Joel Osteen in your area?
No, he is in Houston, and he bought what was originally a sports arena. So he has a 16,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, that's and it's full.
Yeah, so they fill that twice a week, on Wednesdays and on Sundays. And you remember where Christopher Hitchens debated Bill Dembski? That was in Prestonwood Baptist Church. They have a 7,500 seat stadium. So that's 50% bigger than the Melbourne Civic Center.
Well, at least they're not 70,000 football stadiums sized things yet. But I know were you in Memphis for the American Atheist Convention?
I was,
and
I actually rode my bike to that one.
They had an impromptu church service that Sunday morning in the AAA League baseball field across the street.
I went to that.
And how many people were there?
There was quite a lot.
Yeah, it's staggering that they just impromptu. And do we have a number for that? How many people were there?
I have no idea. But, I mean, you're right. It was a baseball stadium, and they filled it up pretty well.
And just poof, they just announce it, and everybody comes running over there because the atheists are in town.
Yep, and it is Tennessee.
It is, and some of these conferences in these smaller towns or in the South actually are kind of pretty fun because that one we went out and walked on the street, and people would actually come up to us because we all had matching T-shirts and talk to us, and everyone was so nice.
Did you make it to the one in Salt Lake City, Utah?
I did.
That was a hoot too, because across the street from us they were doing Comic-Con.
Right.
And they had all of these Christian protesters with their placards and everything outside of Comic-Con, and then they would just cross the street and protest our event, and then cross the street and protest Comic-Con again.
Yeah, I've kind of gotten past the desire to talk to protesters. Even I know you engaged them at the boat, the Ark Park.
Yeah.
But that was a real douchebaggery move for them to show up and try to take over our space.
Well, at least they got somebody that was really capable of douchebaggery.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get good at one skill, you stick to it.
Yeah, that was no greater a person than Eric Hovind.
Yeah, I got one of his pamphlets, and it just trying to read it hurt my head. Which brings us back to creationism, ironically. Have you gone in the boat? Did you go in the boat?
I did. It's actually a building that's vaguely designed to look like a boat on the outside.
Well, it is so funny. Me and Dan Errol have been talking about this boat for years, and when Ken Ham, when they first started construction, I would put up pictures on Facebook that Ken Ham was sharing on his site, showing these massive ground leveling equipment, tearing the top off this mountain and leveling out this ginormous area and digging something like 28 ginormous holes where they countersunk concrete and rebar to put in elevators and in the superstructure. And when Ken Ham first came to the architects and said, "This is what I want to build," and they said, "We can't make it all out of wood," and Ken Ham said, "Why not?" And they said, "The structure wouldn't hold its own weight." And he still moves forward, right? Modern technology, the best wood building technologies and techniques we could ever had, if only we had gopher wood.
Yes, and if you'd ever been inside the structure, every beam is reinforced with giant steel braces that have dozens of rivets in them. And clearly this thing would never, even if it was designed to be a boat, without a load, it would collapse under its own stress. This is evident.
Yeah.
There's no part of this story that is realistic. We know that Noah, Noah didn't exist to start with, but let's pretend for a moment that he did. Let's pretend for a moment that he's 600 years old and that he has the help of 3 untrained laborers using Stone Age tools. This presents something of a problem when you consider the number of years that Ken Ham has been building this thing with hundreds of trained laborers using state-of-the-art equipment with hydraulic cranes and all of the steel rivets,
right?
And all the engineers and all
concrete
the
trucks,
all the trucks to transport how many tons of wood.
Someone should calculate how much steel and concrete is in that place. It's staggering. Did you see the pictures from the backside?
I didn't see pictures, no. Well, I did see one. There's 3 buildings that are like 5-story tall each.
Yeah, there's someone launched a drone a week or 2 after it opened, and like you said, it's a giant building, and the front side of it just kind of sort of looks like a boat.
Yep.
And it's a real farce.
It's just another creation museum, and the inside, they've used up all their space for handicap ramps. I'm serious.
Yeah.
If you're going to have buildings connected to the outside of it, then that's where your handicapped ramps should go, so that you could better show a better use for the space. But they wanted to say that all of the millions of species that we have on the world today were somehow all generated by 1,400 original created kinds.
Right.
So like your cat kind and whatever other kind that nobody can ever identify. And so however many species we're supposed to have, they never identify what the kind is. This is what my video on the phylogeny challenge is, if anybody's curious about it. The best argument against creationism is given in a video called the phylogeny challenge, where they can't identify what the created kinds are. But they made some laughable attempts in the Noah's Ark Park, because among other things, what they had 40 species of stuffed animals, because real animals would be too hard to take care of even on that step.
Right, even on land.
So they had 40 stuffed animals, and one of the stuffed animals was a pair of velociraptors, for example, and I had to point out to the people that worked there, I said, "Where are the feathers?" Because we know that all of these dromaeosaurs had feathers, and of course they wouldn't accept that any dinosaurs had feathers. And then there was one of the species that they had on there was Pachycetus, and I'm sorry to say that this was the best rendering of Pachycetus that has ever been done, and it's done by the Noah's Ark Park, not by anybody actually pursuing science.
Oh, that hurts.
So
that hurts.
Yeah, that does. But it was a beautiful Pachycetus, and Pachycetus, for those who do not know, is the earliest ancestor of the whale lineage. So we're talking about a relatively small animal, only about 1 meter long, that is kind of weasel-like, walks around on 4 legs.
And so that's how they fit the whales on the boat?
This is how.
Did they think that through, or did they even know what they had?
They didn't even know what they had.
Yeah, of course.
They had a number of other things like calicotheres and entelodonts and everything. And I'm walking through with one of the people that works there, pointing out why each of these things is significant. and why these are transitional species. Like they had a married Chippus or Mesohippus. I can't remember which one they had, but it was the horse that has 3 toes.
Yes.
With all 3 toes still touch the ground. And I said, okay, this is an intermediate. This is a medium one because the older one had 4 toes. And then the newer ones, of course, they stand on 1 toe, and you still got the residual or vestigial toes they no longer reach the ground. And then you get to the modern type of equines where they only have the 1 visible toe, and the other 2 toes are so vestigial you can't see them anymore.
So horseshoe gets put on 1 toe?
Yep.
I don't think I knew that. See, I learned something today.
Yeah, horses have been reduced to having only 1 toe, and their hoof is literally a fingernail.
And is that the only animal that has that, or is there something else?
No, the cloven-hooved animals have all lost their thumb, and so they walk on the remaining 4 fingers. So your index finger and your pinky finger would be the tiny little back toes, and they primarily walk on their ring finger the ring finger and middle finger.
So does that just show the genius of the designer to make the parts interchangeable?
Everything about evolutionary ancestry shows that it's also completely incidental, and it's clearly not going according to any kind of a plan.
Now, do you have
rhinoceroses, for example? They lost their pinky and their thumb, and they walk around on 3 toes.
Wow! And is all of this in the book, or is this just stuff we're just bringing up?
Well, there's stuff that I'm bringing up. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting information in the book. I mean, I go through
the book is
like one of the
only
things that people always want
440
to bring up.
pages.
I'm sorry?
The book is only 440 pages. I mean, you could probably write a second book.
Yeah. Well, there was some things I wanted to throw in there because, people want to talk about prophecies as being indicative of, divine inspiration or what have you. So I go through a list of prophecies that clearly failed when they had expiration dates.
Yeah, that's bad policy for philosophy or prophecies. I can't talk tonight.
Yeah, and a couple that that are written as prophecies and given as prophecies, but clearly can't be. And if you just look at that one line, then it does look like a prophecy. But if you look at the other paragraphs around it, you realize it can't possibly be. And there's no way anybody could interpret it that way unless they're deliberately quote mining it, which of course we know they do.
Right. Yeah. I was at a class from an apologist. Local guy had invited me, and I started bringing up stuff from the Bible, and he was getting a little frustrated, and he finally said, "You know what, Phil? You know what your problem is?" And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Phil, you take the Bible too literally." But that was funny because he claimed he was taking it literally, and I said I'm taking it literally in a different interpretation. But these people say I take it literally. What does that mean? But by applying your human intellect to it, you must interpret it. That's just how
nobody
people are.
reads the Bible as literally as an atheist does because we don't have to make up excuses.
That's right.
For when the Bible doesn't say what we want it to say.
Or as I tell people, just read it in its original English. And that'll throw them. Because, of course, now that I'm barely competent in conversation in Italian, I learned the difference that sometimes things just don't translate. You get the essence of it. You get close to it. But when you go from one language to another, you can lose some of the intent, some of the meaning, some of the nuance of it.
There's a great website for anybody that's interested in this kind of thing. If you only know language, which would be like most Americans,
right?
And you want to make sure that your understanding is as accurate as it can be, there's a sort of website called Unbound Bible. And Unbound Bible lets you compare 4 different versions of the Bible at once on any given passage or chapter. And so I'll take the New American Standard and the American Revised Standard and the New Revised Standard and then the King James.
King James, of course.
And I'll read all 4 of them together side by side on any given chapter that I'm looking at because whatever word shows up in one may well be different in another, and you'll have a kind of a breadth of understanding on what can this mean. And where that gets funny is there's places in I think it's Leviticus where it goes through the list of things that you're not allowed to eat. Yeah. And if you look this up on different versions, that list changes.
Ooh.
So it's different
Loophole,
things that you
loophole.
can't eat.
Yeah, that's right. I don't like this version of the Bible. It says bacon is out.
They all say bacon is out in one way or another. However, in one, there's a list of unclean things, and in one version, I think it's the Weymouth Bible or the Darby Bible. I can't remember which of these, but everything on the list of unclean things is all a lizard. They're all different species of lizards. But then in other versions, instead of all being lizards, it'll be some crocodiles and ferrets and I can't remember what else.
They're all basically
other
lizards,
like
right?
little mammal things. How do they come up with these interpretations? This is the same passage of the Bible. How is it so dramatically different?
The place I've gone before is called the Parallel Bible. Is that same thing as the Unbounded?
I'm not familiar with it, but it certainly sounds like that's the same idea.
Yeah, I think the Parallel Bible, what it does is it'll take one very specific chapter and verse, and it'll drop down below it like 20, 25 different versions of the same line. But
one of the things that I like about using the Unbound Bible that way is you discover certain things, like where in the Bible it says that Jesus says, forgive them, Father, blah blah blah, and then he gave up the ghost. Right. That's the way where he gave up the ghost. Well, what's one version of the Bible? But another version says instead of giving up the ghost, he breathed his last breath.
That's true.
And I found a number of places where the word breath is replaced with spirit/ghost.
Spirit/ghost.
So they literally thought that breathing was the breath of life and that air is the spirit world. They didn't know that air was made of particulate matter. They thought that air was spirit. For example, in Ecclesiastes 3, in Ecclesiastes 3, 18 to 21, it describes humans as beasts. And I love this passage, my favorite passage of the Bible. But one of the things that it not only tells men that that they are animals and to believe otherwise is vanity. Which, of course, what Christian is going to listen to that? It's only the Bible telling them that I'm right.
They're cherry picking the Bible, or not.
Exactly. But in that same passage, it says, "Who knows that the breath of the beast descends into the earth, and that the breath of man ascends to heaven?" Which, of course, in a different version, the word breath is replaced with spirit.
It's wacky. Those Christians, and I'm sure you are familiar with this one. The Bible actually has a recipe for creating an abortion, right?
Numbers 5.
Oh man, you're scaring me now, dude. It's like you do this for a living.
Throughout the entire time, and I've had arguments with this. As a matter of fact, some people made a rather scathing video against me about how I'm misrepresenting all of this and how these arguments have been dealt with or disputed or refuted, but they can't say how.
Right. It's been taken care of. Don't worry.
Yeah, but it hasn't been, and they don't address my actual argument. They instead they strawman my argument. They distort it into where I'm somehow saying something that I never actually said. Now that's in the book too. I go into the Numbers 5 thing and how that is definitely abortion, and how we know it to be an abortion.
And what was the
how
what
it
was
had
the
to be done with
what was the spell with that?
God not only condones it, but He's directly involved in the process.
Is that the one where they take the dirt from the floor?
Yes.
Yeah, take dirt from the floor of the temple and mix it with holy water or something.
Yes, exactly.
And a bird's blood? No, that's something else.
No, that's exactly it. They take the dirt from the floor of the tabernacle, where they also used to do the sacrifice of the animals, and they would mix that into some water. So if a man thinks that his wife has been cheating on him, and here's the other thing about it, it's not just that he thinks he's been cheating, but the way that they express it is they say that they know that the woman has had sex with a man.
Right.
But there was no witness. Well, how do you know that she had sex with a man?
They got their ways. They got their ways.
Well, it seems to me that if she turns out to be pregnant, like while he was on a business trip, maybe that would be a good clue.
Sure. Maybe she had the high pro glow the next day.
It never says that the woman is necessarily pregnant, but they say that they know she had sex with a man even though there was no witness. I can't think of a better way to know that than that she's pregnant. And then the way that this curse works was if she had cheated on him, then the womb would discharge. That's according to one translation, of course. Otherwise, it says the thigh will rot and fall away. Well, of course, we know it's not one of her thighs. We know that if there's other references in the Talmud where it talks about, according to Jewish tradition, the infant was considered from 45 days. That's the first 45 days, it's just water. But from 45 days until the time of birth, then the infant is, or the fetus, whatever, is considered to be a limb of the mother, and more specifically, her thigh.
Oh, her thigh.
So people get confused when they're reading the Bible, and then it says that the thigh will rot. Will something go wrong with one of her legs? No.
That is absolutely amazing. Well, we've kind of gotten to the end of our time. We've had too much fun. And probably what I'll have to do is have you come back when we can do a whole show about the Bible instead of just creationism.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of funny stuff in that.
Oh, there is. It never ends. Well, Aron, once again, tell us where we can find your YouTube and your Patreon and all that good stuff.
Once again, I blog at patheos.com. At Reason Advocates, and then my Patreon, most important, is patreon.com/ARONRA, and I am delighted to have even people that will sign up at $1 a video. It would cost you $6 a month, and I need all the help I can get. I really do.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show, and we'll talk to you another time.
My pleasure, sir.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show on Secular Media Network.
Again, of course, special thanks to Aron Ra for joining me for the show. The other thing that's really bizarre, and I get data for the podcast from Spreaker, which is the home of the show. You can go listen to it there, of course, but most people listen to it from some other source. And matter of fact, the single largest source is via iPhones. So a lot of people have iPhones, and a lot of people listen to the show via iPhones. But somewhere around 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a sudden dramatic increase in the number of listeners. Even just at the beginning of this year, the show would get 2,000 or 3,000 listens per episode, and being on several different podcasts, including The Thinking Atheist, of course, drove the show up to 4,000, 5,000, and of course the show several months back about how to beat your child and the child beating sticks with the blue spanker pushed over 10. And lately the shows have been around 5, maybe 6,000. Well, something changed a couple weeks ago, and the number of listens through iPhones dramatically increased, and a couple other places as well. And now the last couple shows have been 7, even 8,000 listens. So I'm not sure what is driving the increased listenership, but if you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. If you've been listening to all of them, and every once in a while I get emails from somebody saying, I just downloaded all 100 of the shows, and listened to them in a very short period of time. I'm flattered. I'm humbled. I'm glad that you like it. I really, really am. I hope it helps you. So if you've been listening to many shows, also thank you for being around, and I appreciate you sharing the show. And one last time, I'm going to just remind everybody that I'm still doing a fundraiser. I think I'll probably mention it one more time with the total next week or two, but for American atheists, you can go to atheists.org/Phil. Real simple, atheists.org/Phil, and donate there. And hopefully soon I'll have a total for you. And I have committed to personally, or at least my company will, match up to $1,500. The last number I had was 555, and that was probably a week ago number. So I'm hoping it's bigger than that now. And hopefully soon it's 1,500 or more. So go there, make a donation, help support them. And we're going to wrap up the show. And again, it's well over an hour, so my apologies if you like the shorter shows. And thank you so much for listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. And we'll see you on the next episode. Ciao.